and welcome back to Instagram Christianity. I'm your host, Ray Johnson, and here I have the wonderful and knowledgeable Brent Hoggard, who just happens to be my boyfriend's dad, but and I am here to get his wisdom and insight on Christianity and comparing it with how he grew up and what he's noticed in the shift in culture of how it's addressed today. So, to start off, I'd like to get an overview from the compare and contrast of what you've noticed from the teachings you got in church growing up compared to what you're seeing today.
Okay. First of all, thank you for inviting me on the podcast. I'm excited to be on here. And this is a new thing for me, but we're going to go with it and have fun. Let's see. Let's start off. I was raised in a Christian home. Christian mother and father and dad. Went to church all my life. Went to church 9 months before anybody ever saw me. So, born and raised in the Southern Baptist tradition. And then, of course, I continue to be involved in my church, leader in the church, work with the children, work with the youth, those types of things. As far as today's society, I feel like the media focuses on the bad things, the negative impacts. And again, I think that they do that because that's what makes ratings. People want to hear the bad in the world to, I guess, compare to what they're doing. And it's like, I'm not doing that bad. So, and as far as the news stream media, that's what I'm comparing to. I don't do the Instagram or the TikTok or any of those types of media. I am on Facebook, so I do see some influences on there, but again, I feel like Facebook really has a strong algorithm that allows you to only see certain things, and so if you're not involved in that type of area or interested in those types of things, the feed does not produce that. So as far as Facebook is concerned, there are few and far between, but not as much as I see on the media today.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Right. And, I just think that the media just wants to focus on the bad instead of the good. And again, I guess it's because of ratings or whatever. But that's what people tend to gravitate toward. And unfortunately, I feel like that becomes a Christianity's downfall, if you want to call it that. Everybody thinks that if you are a Christian, you are against them, or you're bad-mouthing them, or that you're better than them. That would be a great one, and that's not true. The Bible teaches us to love the sinner, not the sin. So wherever you fall into that case, that's where it needs to fall, and that's what I feel like the media focuses on.
Oh, for sure. I mean, especially to your last point on how Jesus has taught us to love in the Bible, in various stories and through those lives. It's quite interesting how there seems to be more of a narrative of, especially on social media, where it's more just attention grabbing of, hey, look at me, look how I am dressed today, and then it's more on that rather than Christ, and it's more just, oh, I'm just going to put a cutesy little Bible verse reference, and then that should be enough to show I'm a Christian, instead of other actions on their page. And it also promotes the mindset with some churches, granted those that don't fall to this aren't talked about or aren't seen on social media nearly as much, but thinking that, oh, well, you have this particular financial income, well, you can't come to this church because, well, you're a bit lowlier than me, and that defeats the whole purpose of being a Christian, because what we consider today and back then to be the low lives, if you will, of the world are the ones that Jesus hung around the most, and is saying that they're the ones who need me the most, as well as everyone, but hope wise, they most certainly deserve as much love as the next person, no matter their class or whatever. And I think that's kind of reverting back to that Pharisee mindset with these times. So, what are your thoughts on that as well?
I absolutely agree. The Bible teaches us that there's nothing different in God's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So the same things that are happening today happened 2,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's just wrapped in a different bow, wrapped in a different package, but it's the same gift. If you want to call it that, it's the same item inside that box. It's just presented differently. And people definitely try to rationalize. That would be a good word. Try to rationalize what they're doing, what they're saying, how they act, how they dress, based upon their ideas and their whims, and social trends have a lot to do with that. And trends come and go, just like anything else. I mean, it used to be back in the 40s and 50s, it used to be almost 60s. It used to be taboo for a girl to wear a miniskirt, let's say. I mean, they were referred to as go-go dancers and things of that nature. Well, fast forward to today, and if a girl's wearing the same thing, she's hardly ever looked at, because it's just society has put blinders on to what the Christian outlook and what the Christian motive should be. And our motive is to go out and tell others about Christ. Mm-hmm. In fact, that's the commission. Go out and tell others about Christ. And we are hit with a lot of resistance and a lot of fact finding and a lot of drawback, because again, it goes into the social economical status. They might have more money than we do. They might have more, a better car, better house, or they go to this particular church or that particular church, or whatever the case may be. And that doesn't have anything to do with anything. The fact is, we are to go and tell others about Christ, rich, poor, indifferent, whatever. And all the other stuff is secondary.
Right. That's well said. I also wanted to get your input with all of what you just said, especially because you refer to the earlier decades of the 40s through 60s. And obviously, I know that 40s and 50s is about when my grandma grew up. But for you, in movies especially, because Hollywood has such a grip to our perception through the lens of how we see the world with movies and TV, how has the Christian message changed in those mediums from when you grew up?
Well, first of all, I didn't grow up in the 40s and 50s. So.
No, I know that.
I would say, well, so to start off with, I was never allowed to go see an R-rated movie. If I did, I don't remember those types of movies. But definitely, again, it's all about grabbing the audience's attention, and it all boils down to money. And movies, especially, is what is going to make us the most movie out of it, most money off of this movie. Mm-hmm. And the more violence, the more graphic, they can put in, the more action, the more sex scenes, I guess, if you want to call it that, it's going to grab the audience's attention because you want people out in the public and on social media to start talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how anything grows, is people start talking about it. Have you seen this? Have you seen that? And then they go and see it, and of course the word spreads, and so that's what movies want to do. So I feel like they like it in your face type scenarios because they want people to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I don't think that they fall under any Christian views or whatever. Again, it's just they're after the money.
Right.
Now I do say several of the movies that have come out that are specifically Christian based,
Mm-hmm.
I think they're at an uphill battle. They are doing extremely well in the market that they're trying to fight in, but again, it's an uphill battle.
Right.
Because they are trying to counteract what the general media is putting out. Now, I particularly, I think those movies are good. I think they're well worth it and well done. It's just that it's one of those things that you don't have all that violence and graphics and things out there in front, so it's not going to grab as many people's attention as it would some of them.
Right. I mean, there's only so much budget-wise for Field of Dreams type of movies you can do.
Absolutely. And again, unfortunately, it all boils down to money, whether it's movies, trends, or whatever the case may be. And you got a Field of Dreams that's on a $20 million budget, and then you've got an Avatar who's on a $500 billion budget, or whatever the budget was.
Mm-hmm.
You just can do more things, and you can have more graphics and more special effects, and that's what draws people.
Yeah. It's kind of funny we're talking about Christian media, because with your answer, it reminded me of a new series my family and I started to watch called The Chosen. Have you heard of that?
I have heard of that, yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Have you seen any episodes?
I have not.
Ooh, it's really good. And I mean, of course, there's some things that are a bit more dramatized as to like filling out more of the backstory of each character, because there's only so much for, let's say, Peter that's talked about in the Bible, as far as, maybe how his romantic life may have been or something like that. More so with how they approach Simon in that regard. But yeah, it's really, really interesting. And, you can tell they put a lot of research into trying to be as accurate as possible and balancing the kind of romantic strifes that can come about. But it's not in a way it takes away from the main message. So I definitely recommend seeing that.
Right, and that's something hard for us, me especially, to understand that Paul and Peter and John and all those guys in the Bible, and the women too, they're human. Mm-hmm. And they're human just like we are, and they face trials and tribulations and problems that we face today. It's the same thing. It's just that the Bible constantly talks about how the disciples followed Jesus and really didn't know who he was. It talks about it all the time. It's like, and we read it now, and it's like, how can these guys be so dumb that they're walking along with the Messiah and they have no clue what's going on? And again, that could be that Jesus didn't want them to know at that particular time, or whatever the case may be. But how many times are we walking along and we have no clue what we're doing?
At least once a day, I recognize it myself.
Right, maybe twice. Right?
Yeah.
But unless we have that solid foundation that we grew up with, and I'm talking about the solid foundation of a Christian belief and a Christian following. We have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It is so sad to go to a funeral, and it's very obvious that the person who has passed away is not a Christian. It's just a different tone and a different feeling and a different atmosphere in that funeral that person is going to spend eternity in hell.
Right.
And you cannot do anything about it because it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes you want to get out and tell everybody, before it is too late.
Right.
Versus going to a funeral who's somebody who has served in the church and is a true believer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing the different atmosphere and the different feeling and the different overall warmth, I guess, would be a good description of, that person was a good and faithful servant and did the best they could. Now, again, nobody's perfect. And, of course, they made mistakes, as well as I make mistakes and everybody else. Mm-hmm. But those mistakes are forgiven. Right. That's the whole thing is once you gain your salvation, you can't lose your salvation. Mm-hmm. And there's probably a lot of controversy about that, but it is a true conversion and a true belief.
Thank goodness, honestly.
Exactly. You might get some comments about that one, but but again, that's my belief.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting you mentioned for those who aren't saved, because there's part of my family that I'm really close to on my mom's side. A lot of them that live in Georgia don't believe, and part of it is honestly because when talking with them in the past, when I was a little kid, about 10 or 11, they would bring up the Christians that were hypocritical and say and then do something completely different, such that nature. And it's really just disheartening, because no matter what age you are, no matter your environment with how you've learned about life, there's always going to be those within the Christian community that seem a lot more prominent and feed into the stereotype of being this highly judgmental, over judgmental with sin. And it also brings me to the point of how there's so much controversy with, LGBT, whatever the rest of the acronym is, and all these things, and how the church, with a lot of the consensus being that kind of sin outweighs, an adulterer that's heterosexual and is just sleeping around with all these other people, as if that's a lot more Christian. So I just think it's interesting how God's always been saying that all sin is equal in his eyes, and yet these days we're kind of acting like we're the court of America, where we're categorizing the significance of sin.
Well, yes, I absolutely agree with that. We are always categorizing that stealing is not as bad as murder. Mm-hmm. But in God's eyes, a sin is a sin. Mm-hmm. And to go back a little bit, even us as Christians, I think we have a hard time understanding God, because we want to put God in a box. Mm-hmm. So we can analyze it, read about him, and understand him. Mm-hmm. And God is infinite, and you cannot put him in a box and try to dissect it and try to understand him, because he is God. Mm-hmm. And then that's where faith comes in. Is a lot of it, you just have to trust him and trust in faith in order to read his word and do what his word says. Mm-hmm. We have a hard time wrapping our minds around. I do anyway. Wrapping around the greatness of God. We just can't imagine it. It's just impossible to imagine. Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know him, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around why they don't know him, because he's in everything that you do, everything that you see, everything that you say. And so that's probably one of the struggles as being a Christian in today would be, is to and I'll say this, for those that do not know Christ,
Mm-hmm.
our job is to lead them to Christ. We cannot save anybody. Only
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ can save others. Our job is to lead them towards the Word or to Him, and then He does the conversion.
Mm-hmm.
It's the old adage: you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Right.
So, that's all we can do, is tell as many as we know about it, and some will reject,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine. Some will accept. That's a glorious day, and then they become our brothers and sisters in Christ.
Mm-hmm. Well, I am so very appreciative of your time and words of wisdom on the questions I asked you, and I'm very excited for people to listen to this and for many more episodes to come. So thank you so much for being my guest today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I was glad to do it, and good luck on your podcast. I have listened to the other ones that you have done, and I was very impressed. And so, thank you again for inviting me.
Well, of course, and thank you again for your support and for being here.
Okay. We'll talk to you later.
All right.